My electric bill shot up from $45 to $847 in 1 month. And it wasn't a mistake, it was theft. At 2:00 a.m., I saw it. Clarissa's Tesla parked right in my driveway, plugged into my solar system. The same solar system I built as a memorial to my late wife. Every bit of that stolen energy was fueling her luxury lifestyle, while I struggled to pay for my daughter's textbooks. What she didn't know was that I spent 20 years designing spacecraft electrical systems at NASA. And when an engineer documents a crime at max voltage, it doesn't end with an unplugged cable. It ends with the police. But how far would I go to make her pay? Clarissa Thornfield was everything I hated about HOA politics, wrapped up in a perfectly tailored suit and a $100,000 Tesla. At 51, she had recently been appointed chair of our Homeowner Standards Committee, and she wielded that clipboard like a weapon. Her favorite pastime was strolling through the neighborhood, judging everyone's yards, and telling us what we could and couldn't do. But it wasn't just about rules for her. It was about control over everything, even the power that ran through our homes. She divorced her first husband after a messy split and somehow found a way to turn her new green initiative into a power grab. A few months ago, she knocked on my door with that fake smile, holding a clipboard and an orange extension cord. She presented me with some paperwork claiming it was a community green initiative to share excess solar power. Before I could even process what she was saying, she plugged in her cord and started dragging it across my driveway to her Tesla. It took just a few minutes for her to steal what should have been my credits, and it wasn't the first time. Clarissa, armed with a laminated piece of paper that looked official enough to fool most people, had found a way to use my grief and hard work to fund her luxury car. She knew exactly what she was doing, and now, so did I. But what Clarissa didn't count on was me. It started small. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. After that initial green initiative stunt, Clarissa would stop by every couple of weeks. She'd make some excuse about checking on the program or conducting compliance assessments. Each time, she'd take a long look at my solar setup, as if she was cataloging it for something else. The electricity bill went up again, $156 the next month. A small jump, but enough to make me uncomfortable. Then came the weird notes. At first, they were polite reminders about community standards, little things like trimming the hedges or repainting the fence. They seemed innocent, but I could feel the edge of something more beneath the words. One night, I found a note on my doorstep accusing me of not being a good community neighbor for not participating in this energy-sharing program she claimed was approved by the HOA. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I needed to focus on Emily's textbooks and the rising bills. I didn't have time to investigate. But then the bills started to climb, and so did the tension. I should have seen it coming. 2 weeks after the last note, I caught her in the act again. This time I was working from home, and as I sat in my office, I saw Clarissa, clipboard in hand, pulling a long extension cord across the driveway again. But this time she wasn't just using my outlet. She was on my property near the electrical box. I watched through the window as she took out her phone, snapping pictures of my solar setup. I opened the door before she could finish. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Clarissa, ever the picture of feigned politeness, quickly straightened up and put on that fake smile. "I'm just doing my part to help the community, Russell," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "We're still testing out power-sharing protocols." I felt my blood boil. "You can't just take my power. This is private property." "Oh, it's not a big deal," she said dismissively. "We're all in this together, right?" Her smile never wavered, but it was clear she wasn't backing down. I tried to be patient. Maybe I could work something out with her. But when my electric bill jumped to $298, I knew something was wrong. I started keeping track of my power usage with the same precision I'd used at NASA, every bill, every kilowatt, every hour of solar production. And then Emily called. She was crying, asking me to help cover the cost of her chemistry textbook, something I'd promised her I could afford. But it wasn't just the book. She couldn't even pay for the dinner that night. That's when it hit me. The solar savings I'd carefully built, the money I'd saved to help Emily through school, was being drained by Clarissa's Tesla. The theft wasn't just a nuisance, it was hurting my daughter's future. I felt trapped. I decided to investigate. I installed power monitoring equipment to track my solar output and usage. What I found was staggering. Clarissa's Tesla was consuming 75 kilowatt hours every single night, enough to power 4 homes. My solar system, designed to keep my bills low and Emily's college education funded, was being hijacked. I approached Clarissa with the data, hoping she'd back off. She refused. "It's just a community effort, Russell." "You're overreacting," she dismissed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. But this time, my frustration turned to fury. She wasn't just stealing from me, she was stealing from my daughter's future. Things escalated quickly after that. I'd had enough. With 6 months of meticulous data and documentation, I approached the HOA board armed with proof of her theft. But Clarissa had already turned the tables. She filed a complaint about me, claiming I was obstructing the Green Initiative and causing trouble in the neighborhood. The next day, a sheriff's deputy showed up at my door. Clarissa had accused me of harassment. I calmly presented my evidence. The power usage records the photos of her charging station, the correspondence, and the documents showing how much her theft had cost me. But Clarissa was ready. She had a forged participation agreement, and she played the part of the innocent victim perfectly. The deputy was skeptical, but he told me he couldn't do much without a formal investigation. He warned me about escalating the situation, but I knew what had to be done. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about standing up for my family and my late wife's legacy. I knew Clarissa would escalate further. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just some frustrated neighbor. I was an engineer. I knew how to document a crime and how to fight back. And that's exactly what I did. The HOA fines started rolling in, each one more aggressive than the last. Clarissa filed complaints against me for every little thing she could think of, from my yard to the placement of my mailbox. It felt like she was using the full weight of the HOA to crush me. She even hired a licensed electrician to bypass my electrical system and install another charging station. That's when I snapped. I had enough evidence to prove her fraudulent actions, her forged signatures, her theft, her manipulation of HOA rules. It was time to make her pay for every penny she had stolen from me. And that's when I set the trap. I knew exactly how to catch her. This time there would be no room for her lies. The HOA meeting had never been so packed. The usual crowd of 20 people had swelled to nearly 150, all of them curious to see what would happen next. Clarissa had called an emergency session, claiming there was a dangerous situation with my electrical system that needed to be resolved immediately. But the real show was about to begin. I stood up calm and composed my laptop, ready with the evidence I'd been meticulously collecting for months. Clarissa, sitting at the front with her usual air of superiority, looked like she was prepared to fight. She had that same smug smile, but now it looked more like a mask, barely hiding the panic beneath. I cleared my throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to talk about a theft that has been happening under all of our noses. Clarissa has been using my solar power to charge her Tesla for months without permission. The room fell silent. Clarissa's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. Russell, you're just making things up. This is all nonsense, she said, her voice tight, but the tension in the air was palpable. I didn't back down. I have the evidence, I said, clicking a button on my laptop. The screen flickered, and suddenly the HOA room was flooded with my data bills, power usage charts, and time-stamped photographs showing Clarissa's car plugged into my system at all hours. I clicked to the next slide, images of Clarissa's Tesla, night after night, plugged into my outdoor outlet. The charging port on her car glowed brightly in the dark, drawing power from my system. It wasn't just her. It was clear this wasn't a one-off mistake. This was planned. The HOA documents she'd presented as part of the so-called community sharing program, forgeries. I've spent months collecting proof. I continued, my voice steady. Here's the documentation of the theft. Over $4,000 worth of electricity has been stolen from my property, all to fuel one car. Clarissa's face drained of color. She shot up from her chair, but I was ready. I played the next clip, video footage from my security cameras, capturing her Tesla charging at the exact same time every night, its charging cable locked into my outlet. I played the audio next, the recording of her bribery attempt where she explicitly offered me cash to make this whole thing go away. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Clarissa's calm facade shattered as she stood there, frozen, unable to speak. The community was silent, but the whispers started. Is this real? She forged all that. People started shaking their heads, disgusted. The tension in the room was suffocating as Clarissa stumbled back into her seat. She tried to regain her composure, but it was too late. The damage was done. I wasn't just exposing a petty neighborly squabble, I had dismantled her entire operation. The board members looked at each other in disbelief, their once ironclad loyalty to Clarissa now shattered by the flood of evidence. Clarissa Thornfield, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. You've been stealing from me and manipulating the HOA to cover it up. You've forged documents, misused your position, and caused serious financial harm. The proof is irrefutable. The HOA president, a man who had always been too timid to challenge her before, now stood up. I don't even know how to respond to this, he said, shaking his head. This is serious. We'll be contacting the authorities immediately. Clarissa's smugness was gone. She fumbled for words, but nothing came out. The final blow came when the police arrived at the meeting. They had been tipped off earlier, and now they were here to arrest her. She was handcuffed right there in front of the entire community. Neighbors who had once feared her started clapping. It was a slow build at first, but soon the whole room was applauding. Clarissa's face turned bright red as she was escorted out, her head hanging low. As the door to the community center closed behind Clarissa, a wave of relief washed over the room. The weight of the past few months, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, everything suddenly felt lighter. The neighbors who had been silently suffering under her manipulation started speaking up, sharing their own stories of how their bills had skyrocketed and how they had been too afraid to challenge her before. The atmosphere was different now. It was a community coming together, shedding the fear that Clarissa had instilled in them for so long. I turned to Emily, sitting beside me, and gave her a small smile. The weight of our financial struggles had been lifted, but it wasn't just the money that mattered. It was the victory, the justice. This was a hard-earned moment for us. Emily's eyes were bright with relief. She squeezed my hand. "I can't believe it, Dad," she whispered. "You did it. You actually did it." As the crowd slowly began to disperse, people approached me, offering their thanks and support. For the first time in months, I felt truly seen, not just as the grieving father trying to make ends meet, but as someone who had stood up for what was right and won. The legal consequences for Clarissa came swiftly. The arrest was just the beginning. The district attorney had no trouble pressing charges. She faced multiple felony counts, utility theft, criminal mischief for her attempted sabotage, bribery, and reckless endangerment for her dangerous tampering with my electrical system. The court proceedings were swift. Clarissa tried to plead that she was simply helping the community, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the video footage, the audio recordings, all of it spoke for itself. She was convicted on all charges. The final blow came when the judge ordered her to pay full restitution for the stolen electricity, the damage to my solar system, and the Tesla service fees. A total of $8,500. Her luxury car was auctioned off to help cover the costs, and the proceeds went to cover my losses. Clarissa's once thriving lifestyle collapsed under the weight of her own greed. Her Tesla was gone, her reputation in tatters, and her financial situation irreparably damaged. The HOA quickly voted to remove her from all future leadership roles, and her name was erased from any position of power in the community. The aftermath of Clarissa's downfall left the neighborhood in a state of quiet renewal. People who had once lived in fear now felt empowered. I had become an unlikely hero in my community, someone who, through sheer perseverance, had dismantled the tyranny of a woman who thought she was untouchable. The settlement money came through just in time to pay Emily's tuition for her last semester. It also helped restore the emergency fund that Clarissa had drained from us. Emily, inspired by the whole experience, shifted her major to electrical engineering with a focus on renewable energy. It was Sarah's legacy, the solar system that sparked her new passion. I could see Sarah in her in the way Emily spoke about energy independence and sustainable power. It was the perfect tribute to her mother, a dream fulfilled in a way I had never imagined. As the months passed, the community began to heal. We started having neighborhood block parties again, something we hadn't done since Sarah's passing. Mr. Newton, our ever-observant cat, seemed to have forgiven me for the budget food phase and was back to his usual demanding self. Emily and I would often sit together, reviewing her coursework with the sun shining through the panels. Sarah had so carefully placed a quiet reminder of the strength it took to turn tragedy into triumph. In the end, Clarissa's downfall was poetic justice, but it wasn't just about her. It was about all of us. We had fought back against manipulation, against someone who used their position to exploit others, and we had won. And I realized something else. When you face a systematic problem, the only way to fight back is with a systematic solution.